Good day, everyone, and welcome to Telecom Review Africa's webinar on the role of fintech in advancing Africa. I'm Jessica Bailey, Assistant Content Director at Telecom Review Group. I'm actually from and based in South Africa, so I think I can confidently say that we're reporting from the heart of the source. I'd like to welcome MSMEs, CMO, Telecom Review Group, to deliver his welcome notes.
Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to all joining us from different parts of the world. On behalf of Telecom Review Africa, it's my great pleasure to welcome you to today's webinar on the role of fintech in advancing Africa. Fintech, as we all know, is not just about technology, it's about empowerment, growth, and transformation. Across Africa, fintech has opened new doors for millions of people who were previously excluded from formal financial systems, from mobile-first services and digital payment to cross-border trade and financial literacy. Fintech is driving change at every level of society. It is enabling women, rural communities, and small businesses to participate in the economy and in turn fueling innovation and sustainable development across the continent. At the same time, fintech is also shaping Africa's role in the global digital economy. MSMEs, which makes up more than 90% of businesses and create 80% of jobs, are finding new tools to access finance, improve operations, and scale. To explore these questions and more, we are fortunate to have with us an outstanding panel of experts and leaders who are driving these changes on the ground. I would like to welcome Mr. Edgar Tau, CEO of Eurisco Mobility, Mr. Sylvain Morlier, Consulting Director FinTech, Inclusion and Governmental Projects at Sofricom, Linda Bouzid, Senior Manager, New Opportunities and Strategic Partnership at Ooredoo Algeria, and Munia Kiura, Strategic Advisor specializing in emerging markets, FinTech, and expansion across Africa. Over the 90 minutes, our discussion will touch on 4 core themes: expanding financial access through inclusion and development, driving Africa's digital economy, unlocking the potential of MSMEs, and exploring future innovation that will shape Africa's fintech journey. This will be a rich and insightful conversation filled with perspective and from across the ecosystem, and we hope it sparks new ideas and collaboration opportunities for everyone watching. For those who could not attend today, I encourage you to watch the full webinar on Telecom Review TV, which will be published in a few days after our webinar today. With that, it is my pleasure to hand the floor again to our moderator, my colleague, Jessica Bailey, Assistant Content Director at Telecom Review Group.
Thank you, Issam. Just a formal note, Edgar is currently joining us from the airport, so if he drops off towards the end of the webinar, you all know why. But thanks for taking the time to join us nevertheless, Edgar. I'm sure we've all seen...
Thank you, Jessica.
No worries, no worries. I'm sure we've all seen that for decades, Africa's financial sector has been remolded numerous times, beginning with physical cash, which is very prevalent in South Africa still, and moving towards digital currencies, blending finance with technology to form fintech. Today, projections indicate that fintech could contribute 47 billion to the African economy by 2028. But while this is encouraging, fintech penetration currently sits at just 5 to 6% in Africa, which is why this webinar is so important. So Edgar, can you give us an overview of the current state of financial access in Africa?
Hi, Jessica. Hi, everybody. Thank you for having me with this in this interesting webinar. And I apologize if there's any noise around me. I'm sitting in a corner in the gate, so also I apologize. I might drop off whenever the boarding starts. So to look at this, it's a very difficult question, but I would divide it into three basic areas to get a real overview about the fintech industry in Africa. One basic important pillar is inclusion. The inclusion varies from country to country. Actually, if you look at the map, you can see a very high inclusion in South Africa, another high inclusion in Kenya, however, a super low inclusion in countries like South Sudan, for example. You could see also a bigger percentage of inclusion of men versus women. However, the market is going into a direction where, in my opinion, the inclusion with fintech, startups, industries, big players as well, is gonna become to take a big role in the next couple of years. And this is something that all fintechs need to be working on to enhance the inclusion and to increase the percentage of the unbanked population. And it's not only about just opening accounts, it's also about enabling SMEs and individuals to be able to perform all the financial services through digital. The second pillar to tackle that matter is innovation. Innovation in Africa could be as simple as fintechs, including products, including services that could fit with the overall culture. I would see microloans, micro-lending, something that will gain a lot of traction. Also, mobile first could be something, not could be, has to be in the top priority, because the mobile inclusion in Africa is really huge all over the place. And the third pillar to look at, which is how regulatory all over Africa is being integrated together. And this is something that maybe puts a challenge. There's not a lot of similarities with regulatory systems all over the place, and fintechs will need to do a lot of homework to be able to cover a lot of areas. So to be able to maximize that part, I think there should be a lot of integration and interoperability between those countries, so that fintechs could get fast access to most of those countries. So I would say the inclusion is low. However, it's going to be in the heart of a lot of fintechs, international players, go on and start to implement all the success stories that have been done worldwide into the African market.
Thank you. You just mentioned that the need to balance micro-lending and mobile integration is quite prevalent in Africa. And this shows that the fintech sector is fluctuating frequently. So how is Eurisco equipping fintechs in Africa with the tools to take on new banking challenges?
All right, to introduce Eurisco a little bit, so we're a tech innovation company, and we're a lot focused on fintechs. We've done a lot of banks in the Middle East, and we had the chance to work with 2 banks in Africa, in Egypt very specifically. So the way I see fintechs succeeding in markets, whether it's in Africa or anywhere else, the focus has to be on a lot of things. So one, if I divide the market into 2 parts, one part which is the retail banking or targeting consumers directly, I would see a full digital journey that is seamless from A to Z, which is something that the user experience, it all revolves around the customer experience. The customer experience has to be easy, has to be seamless, from onboarding to opening a account, to applying for a loan, as well to be able to open other sub accounts. So these are the type of things that could really help that market to grow. I would say there's new innovations that could be very vital for countries in the African market. For example, enabling teen apps and kids apps. So kids, it's some sort of a financial education, and we have done like 2 nice projects, not exactly in Africa, but one of them in Abu Dhabi and another one in Saudi Arabia. One with Al Hilal Bank and another one with Al Bank. It's called as. So basically, with Al Hilal, we created some sort of a game for kids with some sort of parental control and stuff like that, that allows the financial education for the young and kids. And this could prepare like people to be really get used to to the digital financials. We have worked with CIB on their retail app. We're working also on the SME workspace. Also, an interesting projects could be the payment to small merchants. So it's actually enabling small individual merchants to be able to accept payments through their mobile devices. It's like a mobile like POS device. So these are the type of projects that UNESCO really will help fintechs and banks to be able to implement innovative solutions in the digital market.
Thanks, Edgar. I'd specifically like to tap into those emerging innovations you just touched on. Can you elaborate on the role of banks in the metaverse? Like, what unique strategies can Africa implement to bridge the physical and virtual fintech worlds?
Right. What I would see is first to take some success stories that happened in Africa and leverage on that. So, for example, a lot of people, I mean, you don't have a centralized place to accept KYC. So what telecom operators are doing is that they are using the data that they have, and this is something interesting, to be able to onboard people quickly and provide them with microloans. So this is one pillar that could be really an innovation where banks could use that through partnerships with telecom operators or through partnerships with data-driven companies. Another area is thinking a little bit out of the box to increase the inclusion of the upcoming generations. And I just mentioned the kids apps and the teens apps, and empowering really those young generation to be able to use financial services digitally. Third is innovation, and I believe we're gonna go into an era where a lot of banks and fintechs are gonna have to convert their mindset into blockchain technologies due to so many reasons. What I believe the future in the next 4 or 5 years is the transformation of traditional technology systems that we have today into a blockchain-enabled solutions. It's not only cryptocurrency, but to tackle a lot of the areas. It's the technology that we're gonna need, especially with the high rise of the AI and the threats that cybersecurity with supercomputers is gonna face, is gonna put into the market. I believe the solution to that will be blockchain, and I would really advise all banks, all financial technology companies to invest heavily today into the blockchain, because I think we're gonna be hit very soon, and we have to be prepared for that.
I agree. Thanks, Edgar. I think that's a great overview of Africa's convergence mindset, as you just mentioned, to start us off. Sylvain, given this current state, how can fintech ensure that its growth doesn't just benefit urban or tech-savvy populations, but also reaches women, rural communities, and even informal workers?
Yes, hello everyone, and thank you very much for having me. Yes, actually, underserved populations have they face many challenges when trying to access financial services, and we all know these challenges. The first one are probably linked to access to digital channels, whether you need to own a smartphone, any mobile phone, or access mobile internet connection. So fintechs probably have to work on this very difficult challenge to try to find solutions. And to that extent, fintechs that have developed QR codes solutions I found very innovative ways to offer people that do not own a smartphone or do not have any access to the internet, but still can have access to a financial account. And this is very interesting. Another series of challenges, of course, are linked to literacy and digital literacy. I remember attending focus group discussions in Mali years ago, where you had mobile money users that were not literate, but had learned by heart long USSD codes to perform mobile money transfers. So you have bypassing strategies for users, but of course they offer very poor UX or they present some risk, and probably fintech also need to work on these issues. And specifically when it comes to women, we've witnessed that Sofrecom how female users face very specific challenges when it comes to digital skills. They often feel that they actually lack the confidence to use digital challenges much more often than male users do in similar conditions. So whether it's working with women groups, whether it's working with dedicated interfaces, fintechs probably need to find innovative way to offer gender inclusive solutions as well. And I would say maybe the last, yes.
No worries, carry on.
Yes, no, there's a significant challenge as well that is related to ID ownership. You have countries where a quarter of the adult populations, sometimes half of the adult population, does not own any ID document in Africa. So fintechs, but also regulators and authorities maybe could work on trying to find issues. And an interesting benchmark is found in West Africa, where the BCAO regulation has allowed for years actually users that do not own any ID documents to access downgraded accounts, and that's a very interesting solution, I find.
Perfect. Thank you, Savant. UX design is often overlooked, so thank you for bringing that up. In that regard, I agree that the sector does need to take a multifaceted approach to inclusion. And speaking of, Linda, which types of partnerships or areas are most critical to fintech opportunity development in Africa?
Good morning, everybody. Thank you for this insightful question. In my view, the most critical partnership and area for fintech opportunity development in Africa can be boiled down to 3 key categories. They are the collaborations that are not just driving growth, but are fundamentally reshaping the financial ecosystem. The first category is the partnership with incumbent financial institutions. We have the banks and the insurance company. This is arguably the most critical partnership type. Fintech are agile and innovative, but they often lack the two strengths that incumbent have in the abundance, the trust and the regulatory compliance. And banks have dedicated customer trust, extensive customer bases, and most importantly, and the necessary license and the regulatory infrastructure. It's very important. And partnering allows fintech to scale their services quickly without having to build this trust and navigate complex, fragmented regulatory environment from scratch. And the second category maybe is the partnership with telco companies. Africa has a high mobile penetration rate and far exceeding its banking penetration. Telcos have the key of reaching the massive unbanked and underbanked population. And telco can provide access to a vast network of mobile subscribers to mobile money platform, and fintech can leverage telco's extensive agent network and the massive user data and the existing mobile money infrastructure to distribute the financial product like microloans, saving, and insurance. The third category is the partnership, and it's an important category. It's partnership with a non-financial business like e-commerce, agriculture, and retail. This is an area of significant untapped potential. The future of fintech is not just about financial apps. It's about embedding the financial services where people are already doing business. And by partnering with the non-financial business, fintech can access new customer segment, and they can increase the basis of customers and build a new powerful layer of finance services. It is especially important for the informal economy where financial data is scarce, and fintech can use data from this partnership to create an alternative credit scoring models. In conclusion, I think the successful fintech in Africa are not working alone in isolation. They are building a bridge with the established player in the banks, leveraging the reach of telco, and telco can be contribute more in this ecosystem and embedding their services into fabric to the real economy. This strategic partnership are the key of unlocking true financial inclusion and sustainable growth across the continent. Thank you.
Thanks, Linda, for adding a telco perspective. I've noticed that we all seem to be answering in threes, so it's nice and easy for our audience to digest, I think. And now that we've taken a look at the current state of financial access from a citizen perspective, I'd like to shift to a corporate perspective and focus on fintech's role in driving digital economies. Munya, I ended up going down a rabbit hole in your socials and found that you're a big supporter of the creator economy. You've mentioned before that it isn't a side hustle, it's a generational shift, and Africa is leading the way. How important is the fintech sector in advancing the creator and broader digital economy in Africa?
Thank you very much, Jessica. I'll say that I may be the only one who won't do this in threes. So mine really is critical because you mentioned the sort of the creative economy. What's interesting is if you asked me this question 5-6 years ago, I probably would have given you a different answer. I would say that one of the most significant shifts we've seen across Africa has been access to internet. I cannot understate the impact of the likes of Starlink. Starlink is now operating in more than 25 to 26 countries. So access to internet has really changed the game for a lot of industries, especially the creative industries. This is a $47 billion industry when it comes to revenue. That was a source from the IMF. And this is everything from film to music, to gaming, to digital content. I'm a big believer in the influencer economy and the ability to leverage the internet to access information, but also to educate. And so when you look at that figure in itself, it really would suggest that we as Africa have to take the creative economy as an opportunity to create jobs. At the moment, we have to create around 15 million jobs a year in Africa in order to keep up with the demographic dividend, which is the young population. We've got to be able to do that. And I think that when you look at the creative economy, that's one way to do that. And just some examples of the creative economy, look at Nollywood in Nigeria. That creates $1 billion of revenue on an annual basis. You look at African fashion. That creates revenue about $31 billion a year. We also look at recently the Afrexim Bank created a fund for the creative economy of around $2 billion. So this is, for us, I think, is an important opportunity, not just for individuals, but also for SMEs. And when you look at the change in work itself, I think one of the key things we need to recognize is that the nature of work will change. And this is where we also talk about the gig economy, is that there may be opportunities for people to do individual work, right? That might be a short-term opportunity rather than a longer-term opportunity. To give you a very specific example, last week I met with an entrepreneur who's put together a streaming platform. He has an employee base of 4, but he has access to almost 50 streamers who can be, think about it as streaming on demand, where he can get access to those streaming services or individuals based on work that's available. So I see a lot of that happening within the creative economy, where we're creating jobs, and these jobs may be different in nature. But yes, I would say that the creative economy is certainly and can be a significant contributor to African jobs, to SMEs, and then to the overall Africa economy.
Brilliant. So not to completely dumb it down, Munya, but basically those influencers taking food pics equate to an industry that does bolster Africa's GDP eventually.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
Great. With this in mind, what can we learn from the African countries pioneering mobile-first services to advance cross-border trade?
Yeah, another very good question. You know what's interesting for me is that I sort of say that if you're not mobile first in Africa, go home, right? I mean, 66% of mobile money transactions happen on the Africa continent. I believe that number's $1.4 trillion, and that's the equivalent to the GDP of Turkey or Switzerland. So significant when you look at the likes of MTN and M-Pesa and Orange, just to mention three of the big telcos, right? The reality is that mobile money in itself has created a monster of an opportunity, right? So if anyone is not mobile first, then I think then that is a challenge. I would say that if you're not mobile first, then go home. Right. So I think we really, and Edgar mentioned this, which is that financial inclusion, one of the reasons why telcos are so important to the Africa ecosystem is that they have brought people in terms of financial inclusion. You look at some people, the first bank account they've ever opened has been on a mobile phone. It's a mobile money wallet, right? It's not a traditional bank. And there's some various factors around that. So for us, I think that mobile first really is looking at what's happening with some of the mobile operators in terms of pushing mobile money and mobile financial services. So it's not just about transacting now. I think we're seeing a slew of services that are being offered around mobile money and telcos. So I think that becomes important. The other aspects, I think, where we're seeing a lot of interesting mobile first discussions have really been around the what I call the Africa continental free trade right area. That's a $208 billion opportunity, which is the intra-Africa trade. And everybody talks about cross-border trade in terms of Europe, US, other China and other corridors. But when you look within the 54 African countries, there's a significant amount of trade that's happening. And a lot of that has been limited by the challenges of just being able to move money across borders. I was fortunate to be involved in a couple of SME projects where we were helping SMEs think through what the cross-border opportunities are like. So if I'm doing business in Nigeria, what does it look like in terms of then doing business in other parts of the world like Ghana, and that's where the payments infrastructure really plays a key role. So I think the Africa continental and Africa, if we can keep an eye on what's happening there, even on the regulatory front, is making it easy for money to move within borders and across borders. I think is really important. In addition to that, I'm also excited about what's happening with the Pan-African Payment Settlement System, which is the ability now to have banks leverage platforms to move money and trade without having to rely on challenging currencies such as the US dollar and euro, which are difficult to source across Africa. So all of this, drives towards, the idea that everything has to be mobile first. And with that, you're seeing not just the telcos, driving, mobile money, but you're also seeing the integration across Africa with, continental trade, free trade agreements, and then you're also seeing some significant traction with payment settlement systems, which is making it easy for SMEs and MEs to transact across the continent.
Brilliant. We've actually got a very active audience at the moment, and someone has just asked something that I think is very relevant to what you just said. They've asked if banks are going to integrate with fintechs, do you see that working best through APIs and open banking or through reserve sharing models?
Yeah. Look, this is my personal opinion. I'm big on APIs, and I'll just give you a very interesting example of the work that needs to be done even within the banking ecosystem. I remember talking to a remittance company that wanted to integrate into a bank, and they had these great conversations, and then one question came up that, do you have APIs? And the bank said they didn't have APIs. Right. So why that's important is because if fintechs and banks are to work together, and I think there's a lot of merit around that model, is that APIs, I think, are the quickest and easiest way for you to do that, especially across the Africa continent, right? When you start looking at all the different payment methods, all of the, whether it's mobile money, cards, APIs, I think for us, in my experience, have been the easiest way to try and move along integration in a way that makes sense. But yeah, I'm a big fan of APIs, and I think that we haven't explored that much as we should. Even within APIs, think about open banking. I know there's some questions around what trends do we see in the future? What are the emerging technologies? Open banking is one of them, and I think that looking at APIs is a good way to move quickly on some of these integrations, and also allow some of the cross-border payments and trade and money movement to happen a lot more efficiently.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Edgar, if you're still with us, before you drop off, could you potentially elaborate on the African fintech infrastructure? Has it become commonplace globally, or will the continent be an adopter rather than a pioneer?
First of all, Monia, thank you so much for this. All what you said ring the bell in my mind, you know. So, can you repeat please the question, Jessica?
No worries. We are literally wait. You're right on the plane, I can see. So thank you so much for bearing with us. So for you, your last question: can African fintech infrastructure become commonplace globally, or will the continent be an adopter rather than a pioneer?
Look, of course, the infrastructure can play a big role, and this is where it's gonna come. Like today, anyways. Monia spoke about the interoperability between the African countries, and I think when fintechs are starting to penetrate Africa, it's gonna go global. Now, there's a lot of challenges which are beyond the fact of the economic and innovation and infrastructure. There are geopolitical challenges as well. So this is something that some countries like Sudan, some other countries in Africa, have not had the chance yet to get on that train, but other countries have been really following the trend really quickly, and we've seen a lot of economic and fintech inclusion. Now, regarding the infrastructure, I think there's a lot of work that needs to be done. It's not only in Africa, everywhere else, everywhere in the world. We're going towards a place where the money exchange is gonna change dramatically. So the way we do transfers today, the way we do centralization today, is gonna go for a very simple reason. I would tell you, one day we're gonna wake up in the morning, our cards and our accounts are not accessible. Why? Because the supercomputer somewhere with an AI went wrong. So the solution to that is not with the current infrastructure that we have. Actually, it's going to be with blockchain and with distributed ledgers, and this is something that can happen. So a supercomputer cannot hack 10,000 nodes at the same time, but a supercomputer can hack a centralized system somewhere in a bank or whatever. So all the hashing that we have today, the security that we have today is going to be exposed very soon. So this is why the mindset of the infrastructure that we think about today is not the same infrastructure that we're gonna have tomorrow. However, this is a great opportunity for Africa and for many other countries to have those distributed ledgers. And I would see a world where crypto is gonna be the main currency, and it could be regulated, not regulated. It's a matter of time. But people are gonna use digital currencies all across the borders, and whether the infrastructure in Africa could be a part of this, of course. I mean, the work that needs to be done in Africa needs to be done everywhere else in the world. Middle East, for example, Asia, Pacific, for example. So it's something that's gonna have to change everywhere else. And then this integration that we speak about is gonna change dramatically. I think we went into a different subject, but I believe that it doesn't matter whether it's ready or not, it's gonna change soon. Anyways.
Thank you, Edgar. Thank you so much for joining us. And I appreciate your
Thank you.
positive response towards the African fintech sector, specifically the infrastructure. Thanks,
Thank-
Munya, as well.
Thank you, everybody. I have to drop off myself. And thank you. It was great meeting everybody here. And hope we connect soon again.
Thanks, Edgar. Fly safe.
Thank you. Thanks so much.
And thanks to
hi,
you as well,
Jessica.
Munya, for spotlighting
Absolutely.
inherent African infrastructure. Do you want to say something
No,
as well?
absolutely. Yes, I would. In fact, I just want to add on to what Edgar said about pioneering. I think what's interesting to me when I see announcements made about Pay with Bank in the US with Stripe, you see payment links created in Stripe. People forget that some of this technology actually came from Africa. When you look at Pay with Bank, for example, that was actually created in markets like Nigeria, where there was an opportunity to allow people to transfer money within banks. So Pay with Bank, interesting enough, was created in markets like Nigeria's. Payment links again was created actually by some African fintechs. One being Paystack, and now we see these interesting technologies being rolled out now. So I believe Africa is still the pioneer. The last example would be a cryptocurrency. I mean, the use cases for cryptocurrency across Africa are very different. We have $250 billion that's happening across the crypto ecosystem in Africa. And you look at the use cases for crypto, cross-border payments, P2P are very different than what you see in the emerging markets, and now even stablecoins. So I think that Africa will continue to be pioneers because we've got really interesting use cases that can be applied across the world. Thanks, Jessica.
100%. Agreed. I think we've taken quite a broad approach to our digital economy section. So I'd love to now explore a more niche subcategory, that being MSMEs. Sylvain, this month you wrote an exclusive op-ed published in Telecom Review Africa on the transformative power of fintech innovation in unlocking Africa's MSME potential. Can you please tell us how fintech can support the growth of MSMEs, or what value fintech can create for African MSMEs?
Yes, thank you, Jessica, for your question. Well, traditional financial service providers have struggled to serve African MSMEs. They've struggled to serve companies that often lack financial records, audited statements, credit history, or any collateral. So it's been very risky for them to serve these companies, and it's been sometimes quite costly to serve companies that operate on small ticket scale, let's say. So on the other hand, fintechs, they found ways to overcome these challenges. They found ways to serve MSMEs at a lower cost using digital channels. They found ways to operate, to automate procedures, to automate credit scoring, to lower the cost of using financial services for MSMEs as well. For instance, allowing them to accept merchant payments without POS terminals that are pretty costly for MSMEs. So they found these solutions, and I feel there are two major areas where fintechs can create value for African MSMEs. The first one, obviously, is credit. My fellow panelists mentioned this topic as well. There is a massive credit gap for African MSMEs, estimated above 300 billion US dollars by the IFC years ago. So it's probably higher now. The African Development Bank estimates that less than a quarter of African companies have an access to formal loans or to any line of credit on the continent. So you see that there's this huge gap, and fintech has proved that using alternative data to open the access to credit, and specifically to digital credit, is very, very efficient. So probably we'll see a lot of companies still exploring digital loans opportunities and exploring how to serve new use cases, because we have a lot of companies working now on trying to solve working capital issues for MSMEs, but probably in the near future, you'll have companies working on trying to bring solutions to payment facilities for MSMEs suppliers, and the likes of Kunda a Kenyan fintech, for instance. You have companies that will be exploring how to support MSMEs in managing salary advance for the employees. This is something Time Bank in South Africa is already doing. And you have a lot of other use cases around credit for MSMEs, and probably this will be a massive area of value creation for them. The second one is merchant payments. This has long been an El Dorado for fintechs in Africa. Just to give you some figures, the World Bank recently issued some data about the use of digital merchant payments over the world. It was about 20% of adults in 2024 that used such solutions in sub-Saharan Africa. And this is to be compared with more than 40% in Latin America and the Caribbean, and to approximately 70% of adults in East Asia and the Pacific region. So there is area for growth, definitely. So probably it needs to be investigated by fintech, and merchant payment will be the next big thing in Africa, and how fintechs will create value for MSMEs. Having said that, there is a challenge for fintechs, and it is about how they can demonstrate the value that digital merchant payments can bring to retailers in Africa, because they are reluctant to use these solutions, and often it's linked to the tariff, the transaction fees that are applied. But innovative fintechs have found ways to expand the value proposition, and fintechs that use data related to merchant payments to allow an access to credits for retailers offer very, very interesting solutions. I feel this is an area for growth, and probably something that will be very interesting in the near future.
Thank you. You mentioned in your article that digital retail payments are seen as El Dorado. So what support or conditions are needed for fintechs in Africa to finally strike gold?
Well, there are issues related to closed loop systems, and the interoperability thing is probably a major topic on the continent. So you see a lot of initiatives, whether they are led by institutions or led by fintechs, but interoperable payment is, in my view, one of the most critical challenge for fintechs to develop this merchant payment business.
I agree. I think that's very pertinent, especially since MSMEs account for more than 90% of businesses and 80% of jobs across the continent, which I think Issa mentioned in his welcome notes. Yet most remain trapped in the informal sector with limited access to finance, payments, and even growth tools. Linda, how is Urdu Algeria addressing limited financial access in Africa?
That is an excellent point, because here we have a lot of limitation. And so we, with Uridu, we try to find a solution, because while traditional banks have struggled to serve the vast unbanked and underbanked population in Africa, telco like Uridu are positioned to bridge this gap of customer. And our strategy in Nigeria is built on three main pillars. The first and the most important pillar is the leveraging network infrastructure. Because Uridu first and most fundamentally contribution in this extension network by investing heavily in modernization its network with the 5G and roll out advanced 5G network, and is bringing digital connectivity to vast part of Algeria, including all the regions like rural and remote areas. It's important to offer the best coverage in this region first. because the digital financial services require a reliability connectivity. Without good connectivity, we cannot build and develop some financial solution. And by extending our network coverage, Ooredoo is creating the very foundation upon which digital payment can be implemented and developed. For example, we have the mobile banking and the other fintech solution can be built. This is the crucial first step, I think, toward the financial inclusion here in Nigeria. And you have in the second step, you have the investment in the fintech. Ooredoo Group, because Ooredoo Algeria is an OPCO of Ooredoo Group, and we have a lot of OPCO in the Africa and the other side. Ooredoo Group has made a strategic decision to invest in the fintech as the core business verticals through its new fintech platform and services. It is directly taking financial exclusion, and Ooredoo is not just a passive enabler, it is an active player in the field of financial and financial technology, and the company is actively rolling out a digital wallet and payment solution. Sometimes through our financial technology company, we have, which is now operating, we have now, for example, we developed the Ooredoo fintech in, I give you just an example about the Ooredoo fintech in Tunisia, and they develop a lot of a platform like Wallet. In the new market, this wallet enable users to platform essential financial transactions directly from the mobile services, and they offer different services like mobile payment, money transfer, and airtime and data top-up. Why Ooredoo access their strategy on these two pillars in order to build a digital ecosystem and comprehensive digital ecosystem that goes beyond the basic telecom services with signing just a partnership with the banks and government entities and other businesses to integrate just its payment solution. They want to access this and focus on the customer centricity services, and with offering a mobile application like My Ooredoo app, which is a key to this, how we call it, solution. They provide the user-friendly interface for managing account and making a payment, and to offer to this customer the habit to and educated to use the payment, the mobile payment, by a different interface. Thank you.
Thanks, Linda. The first pillar you mentioned, I think it was modernizing infrastructure. I think it's definitely a great first step towards financial inclusion and supporting MSMEs, as it ultimately forms the basis of mobile payments. Drawing on your extensive experience working with fintech such as Flutterwave, can you elaborate on the different approaches being taken to support them?
Yeah, Jessica, there's something that Sylvan said that resonated with me, and I just wanted to comment on that. A few weeks ago, I met with a friend who was trying to get a loan from a bank, SME, or you can call it MSME, and he wanted a $50,000 loan. And they went through the process, and the bank basically came back and said, look, we're happy to provide the loan to you. However, we need collateral. And that collateral that they had requested was his house. His house is worth $1 million, right? So this is the reality a lot of SMEs go through, right? And I think that this credit gap is real. And this is why I think that if we are to make progress with supporting MSMEs, then the credit gap has to be reduced. Now, I know that there's some interesting innovations that come about where that is certainly allowing more access to credit. The one I'm particularly interested in and have had experience is around how do you provide lending without collateral. I happen to work for a company called Empower Financing that provided zero collateral loans for students. It was about up to $100,000 for them to attend universities in the US and Canada. And what Empower did was create an algorithm. It looked at about 1,000 data points, and those data points then provided the likelihood. Remember, that's what risk is. What's the likelihood that Munya will repay his loan? And I think that area right now is significant in terms of opportunities across Africa. Obviously, that requires a lot of data to be able to do that, but I do think that's a real interesting area for me around trying to minimize or reduce that credit gap, given the fact that traditional ways of lending are not working for the SMEs or the MSMEs sector. I think that's important. How do you reduce risk? Why I also like the likes of Flutterwave, in my experience, and a couple of interesting companies like MoneyPoint in Nigeria, is that you look at agency banking, you look at the ability of having a point of sale device in a retail location. There's a lot of data that's collected. So what would stop me as a financial service provider where I'm able to access the sales book for the day or the previous day, and then I'm able to lend against that. I think there's some really creative ways that one can do that. But I would say that for me is critical, is how can you start leveraging the data and maybe new innovative ways of looking at lending. I think is the only way we can advance some of the challenges that SMEs are facing. But yeah, definitely the access to credit is a real critical challenge, and I think we need to continue to find ways to solve it.
So data-driven decision-making and access to credit. Brilliant. I really like this section because we can see 3 different approaches to support and development, which I think is definitely needed in a sector where tools are not necessarily universally applicable. Let's move on to future innovations. Naturally, like in every sector, AI has caused a stir. However, in a market that is still largely cash-based, which I did illustrate in the beginning, I think we'd all like to know just how relevant exploring AI, open banking, and even decentralized finance in Africa is at this current moment. So, Savant, since many MSMEs in Africa still physically collect payments, how can future digital solutions realistically be introduced to replace or reduce?
Yes, payment collection is a serious challenge for African MSMEs, and indeed you can see it's quite often that entrepreneurs visit the clients to collect the payments actually. So fintechs have been working on this, and you find very innovative solutions on this topic. You have fintechs offering phygital points of services where clients can pay MSMEs. The likes of Fawi in Egypt have been working on these solutions, and I find this is a very efficient solution to avoid physical visits to clients. Beyond that, interoperable payments, I mentioned this earlier, is probably a very important thing as well. Whether it's interoperability between mobile money providers or fintechs and banks, whether it's institutional with public hubs, whether it's powered by fintechs. In any case, this will be very interesting for African MSMEs because it broadens the spectrum of acceptance and it broadens the number of options they have to collect these payments. Going further, I think this is something Munya mentioned, and I really like these payment requests and payment links. I think they're super innovative and very interesting. So you have a lot of African fintechs, such as Paydunia, such as Mavions, such as Cashcall in Egypt that works on these payment requests. They're very interesting because they offer a very good experience for both MSMEs and the clients. They also power the opportunity to accept invoicing, which is very interesting for both clients and MSMEs as well. So they're very innovative solution and very interesting. And this is how I feel fintechs can really crack this challenge of collecting payment for MSMEs.
Thanks, Savant. Now I'm interested to check whether South Africa has any of these additional collection alternatives. Linda, given that you head up new opportunities at Ooredoo Algeria, what approach do you think Africa should take when adopting new technologies?
In my view, I believe the approach to technology adoption in Africa should be both strategic and pragmatic, and not about being the first to adopt very low new technology, but rather about adopting the right technology according to the ecosystem of the countries. And our strategy can be summed as a type foundation first approach, which is built on the concept of pragmatic leapfrogging. We have at the first step is prioritizing the connectivity. Because before we can even talk about the advanced technology like ER or the Internet of Things, or IoT, we must focus on the most critical foundation, widespread fraudulent connectivity. In Africa, the digital divide is fundamentally as a connectivity gap. And the first priority must be the aggressive rollout to reliable high-speed network, particularly for 4G and fiber to home, like FTTH here for Algeria. And we need to ensure that this connectivity is not just a luxury, but is basic utility to develop some solution of mobile financial. And this tribe model, I think that not all countries or regions are at the same level of readiness, and Ooredoo invests here in Algeria more money with their to connect every of the population, the most important population here in Algeria, and have focused on solidifying our 4G network coverage and making us a key enabler of digital services without this fundamentally layer, more advanced technology simply can function effectively, and we cannot propose some high technology or high solution payment for all our population. And once the connectivity foundation is in place, the next try, I think, is to introduce the technology that solve immediate real-world problem for the population, not propose the high technology that the population cannot use. And when we didn't have all the ecosystem embedded on this new technology, we cannot propose some services for people that cannot use it. And this is where fintech and mobile commerces are paramount, and here in Africa has already proven its ability to leapfrog legacy banking system with the mobile money.
Thanks, Linda. So which technologies do you think Africa should focus on?
What?
Sorry, carry on. You were mentioning the technologies that Africa should focus on.
We should focus on the different platforms. This platform where we can embed some e-commerce provider and some services of the company, and to create all this ecosystem where the customer then can interact on just one platform who offer all the ecosystem in terms of payment, of services, of it's very difficult to propose a different solution with EAS intelligence, or for the solution with the connectivity that we can use it is with the 5G, and that the customer cannot have the behavior customer experience. For example, we can focus on the ER should be used to improve existing services, not as a standalone product. For example, using ER to enhance the customer services or personalize the user experience and create a new business model like a cloud gaming or smart agriculture will require the low latencies of 5G. But in parallel, at the final stage of our strategy, For example, Orido invest in EA-ready data centers and the rollout 5G network across the market are not just technology sake, but just to design and to support the sophisticated needs on the ecosystem and offer the best customer experience for the people.
Great. So then do you think that these technologies should be introduced in tiers on different levels, maybe once at a time?
Yes, we should. We have a big gap in terms of technology, and the national entities like banks are and the other entities cannot how we call it they cannot embed it on and they cannot adapt this technology actually with their basic systems. At the first, fundamentally, we should how I forgot the idea. I think we should start with the basic technology and grow up step by step. We cannot impose to the population and the customer here in Algeria the high technology without the basis of the in order to implement these technologies.
Perfect. Thank you for clarifying. To round out this segment, Munya, do you think these emerging technologies will have a uniquely transformative impact in Africa compared to global markets?
Just a very good question. I want to quickly comment on something Sylvan said about cash. We often have this equation that cash is equal to financial exclusion. And I think that what's clearly coming to mind now is that cash is an enabler. So if you can find a way to monetize that, record it, transact, it can actually be part of the financial inclusion ecosystem. I think that's what a lot of companies across Africa are realizing. We're not going to get rid of cash, right? It's still in certain markets it's still a payment method that will exist for the foreseeable future. I think for me, the three technologies I think about in terms of what we need to watch out for and what we need to embrace would be AI, open banking, and DeFi. On the AI, look, there are some conversations going on. Roman Yamposki, for example, talks about the fact that by 2030, 90% of the jobs across the world will not exist, right? But I think the reality is that there are incredible use cases for AI even in Africa. Case in point for me is Ethiopian Airlines. Ethiopian Airlines is $7.6 billion of revenue. They have about 154 planes. They use AI for predictive maintenance. They use it for routes. They use it for customer experience and customer service. Why would I mention a big entity like Ethiopian Airlines when it comes to SMEs? There is an opportunity when you think about an ecosystem, right? The ecosystem would be that if I'm in Ethiopia and you've got a very significant AI activity, then SMEs can actually plug into that ecosystem. So I think the key thing is that trying to understand what is the competitive advantage that specific African countries have around AI and building solution sets around that, I think for me would be one of the recommendations that I think that we need to think about. The second is open banking. We've seen this across Africa. Specifically for me, Nigeria continues to be an interesting use case. Why does open banking matter? It's access to data, right? The ability now that I'm able to offer financial services that tradition would not be able to offer because I've got access to that data, I think for me becomes important. Things like credit, right? It's just one example of that, where maybe banks are not offering credit, but there are other financial services or fintechs that can provide those services. The last, and for me, I think Edgar mentioned this, is we cannot minimize the impact of decentralized finance. There are many, many interesting use cases. I happened to meet somebody a few weeks ago who's built a platform to tokenize land. Right. So think about the ramifications for that and the ability now to think about lending is really using DeFi for those kind of opportunities. The other application that they were looking at was for exports, right? To tokenize exports for horticultural products, right? So the applications are quite mind-boggling, but I think that DeFi, whether it's remittances, moving money, whether it's stable coin, whatever those use cases are, blockchain, I think that DeFi for me will ultimately be one of those technologies that we have to embrace, but also look at applications that are very unique to Africa, because I think that's where it becomes really interesting. Is that it doesn't have to be a global phenomenon. I think we've got some really interesting pain points that we can solve with that technology right here on the continent.
Great. I think you all keep supporting an African native mindset and keeping everything as African native as possible. So in other words, African fintech for African fintech, if that does make sense. I don't know, I'm thinking out loud here at this point. But although we've touched on this throughout, to leave the audience with something to think about, I'd like each of you to identify a final major barrier to fintech advancement in Africa. Linda, what do you think is a major barrier to fintech advancement in Africa? While we wait for Linda, maybe Sylvain, maybe you could start us off. What do you think is a major barrier to fintech advancement in Africa?
Um, I think this issue related to ecosystems being quite closed, some markets, it's a major challenge for fintechs, and I'm definitely a big supporter of interoperability, whatever the way it happens, on being again institutional or led by the industry or bilateral agreements. But I feel fintechs, they need to be able to interact with banks, with mobile money providers, with telcos and other players. And this is very important, that there is this infrastructure on every market. And this is on this infrastructure that ecosystem will be able to create value with their agility, creativity, and all the things that fintechs do very well. So really, for me, it's all about opening the ecosystems to ensure that fintech can create value.
Brilliant. Monia, do you want to add anything to that?
I think Sylvan hit the nail on the head. It is about this collaboration, and I give quite some credit to South Africa. What I think about is what South Africa did with the interworking groups, getting fintechs and banks to talk to each other, and more recently allowing fintechs to participate in what traditionally was banking closed loop systems. So I think it's really this collaboration. At the end of the day, we're all trying to solve the same problems, right? And I think that the recognition for me that took a long time, that banks by themselves cannot solve financial inclusion. Now we have telcos in the equation. We got fintech. So that system of being able to speak and collaborate with each other will ultimately will lead to the success. So yes, I would say that the interoperability is one of the challenges we absolutely have to solve.
Brilliant. There is a policy question that's just been added here. I'm not sure if any of the two of you would like to answer it, but we can give it a go. Given the implementation of the African Continental Free Trade Area, how do you see fintech driving seamless cross-border transactions, digital payments, and financial integration across member states? I think, Monia, you did touch on the African Continental Free Trade Area earlier.
Yes, I did. I think the only challenge I would say is that at the moment, I think that the focus has been on the large corporates. I mean, Pan-African Payment Settlement System is sort of the one of the mechanisms. But if you kind of look at who's participating in that ecosystem, it's primarily 150 commercial banks and the central banks, right? It hasn't really cascaded down to SMEs. So I think we've got a little work to do there, but I would say that that is the beginning. And I hope that in the near future, fintechs will be given a platform, because the numbers were talked about in terms of the fact that this SMEs provide a significant GDP contribution to Africa. So while corporates and banks are in that ecosystem, I think it's important to ensure that SMEs get a platform. But I think we are moving in the right direction in terms of having the Africa Continental Free Trade Area, and then you've also got the Pan-African Payment Settlement System. I think that's just ways in which we're seeing some traction.
That's good to hear. Thank you. And by the way, thank you for the honorable mention of my country there. I do appreciate it in your previous answer. Sylvain, is there anything else you want to add before we close?
No, I just would like to thank you again for having me today. And that was great being part of this discussion. So thank you again.
Thank you. I think that wraps it up perfectly. So let's end it there. On behalf of Telecom Review Group, a big thank you to you, all of our panelists, for such thought-provoking insights. And thank you to our global audience for joining to learn more about Africa's fintech sector. We do hope you join us again in the next one. Have a great day further, everyone.